Welcome to IMC Live, the interactive webinar series hosted by the Industrial Marketing Collective. We're here to help you make connections, learn, and get results for your business. And I'm Alan Finewald, a senior writer at the industrial marketing agency Gorilla 76 and one of your IMC Live hosts. This week's topic is gated content. And when we say gated content, we mean like assets like white papers that you require contact information to access. You'll often see these companies require an email address to download the content most often. So our guest today, Craig Coffey, is a content strategy and marketing manager at Eaton's residential division, and he has been in marketing for 20 years and developed a lot of hot takes when it comes to the gated content. One of our favorite takes around here that we've got from him already is gates are for livestock. I think that some of our gorillas are going to be stealing that little mantra and speaking your truth, Craig.
Yeah.
So we thank you for that. Hopefully you don't mind us using it.
No. Spread the word, spread the gospel.
All right, amen to that. Craig, welcome aboard. Why don't you tell people a bit more about yourself?
Yeah, thanks. As Alan said, I work here at Eaton in our residential products group. I do content strategy and marketing management for our residential products group. I've been here about 4 years now, and I was with our software group prior to that, which is called Brightlayer. Have a lot of industry experience with companies you guys probably recognize, Parker Hannifin, Lincoln Electric, Caterpillar. So a lot of industrial marketing experience. Always nice to talk to industrial marketers because I think we are unique animals with unique challenges. And yeah, this whole conversation about gating content kind of came up from a LinkedIn post I put out about 2-3 weeks ago. I was kind of maybe made the mistake of letting my opinion about gating content be known at a staff meeting, and I was met with strong opinions, I would say is probably the best way to put it. Maybe a little resistance on my, no gating content, no gating stance, and therefore I was tasked with solving the problem of what gating means to Eaton and how we establish processes for deciding when to or when if or if not to gate content. So thanks for having me here, and I'm here to learn from you guys too. I am very much in this sponge mode right now, where I want to know what your thoughts are, what your experiences are. So feel free to either voice them through Zoom or in the chat. But the more I can find out, the more I can bring that back to our team and hopefully develop a process that works for us. And so I'll just kind of pause there.
Yeah, it's going to be a great conversation. One note from Peyton before we dive in, but she just said that I don't think I've met anyone who has spoken more passionately about content marketing than Craig. So coming from Peyton, that's high praise because she is a passionate individual.
Well, I remember when content marketing wasn't even a thing, when it was before it was even invented. And it's crazy to think that a term like content marketing could be invented by a guy named Joe Polizzi, who also is the guy who started Content Marketing World, who also happens to be a Cleveland guy, which is where I'm based and where I've lived for the last 30 plus years. So, but I also am realistic enough to know that not all marketing is content marketing, but I come from a very content marketing centric view of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, speaking of that, what do you feel like the typical view is on gating content and content marketing right now? What are the trends that you're noticing, and how do you feel like you're playing within them?
Well, I'm not sure if I could call them trends, but we're going through a content reorg on Eaton.com right now, and one of my jobs, one of the things I had to get done to do that, was literally audit every piece of content in the residential marketing segment. And what I noticed is that there's a tendency to gate content that I think should be open, because I think we put our business boots on before we put on our people boots on in the morning. And we think, if I've got to show leads, then I better gate that content, because then I can show the effectiveness of the campaign that I'm running. Whereas I would come from an idea of, maybe that content should be free range content, because it'll actually attract more eyes, create more brand affinity and brand engagement with our company. So that's kind of where the conversation or debate started at our company. But then the other interesting thing I saw was, there may be, and I want to dig into this more. Maybe you guys have some opinions. I work in a global organization, and the majority of my counterparts, I have half my counterparts are in Europe, and there seems to be a larger, maybe perhaps cultural difference in gating content versus not getting content in the US. And it seems to be that they're more pro gating than we are here in the US. I don't know if that's going to bear out, but that's one of the kind of hypotheses or questions that really need to dig into.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go on, Connor.
No, I mean, I think a lot of marketers, like myself included, like just had this assumption that's always been there that like, oh, there's content you gate. So I feel like more people kind of struggle with this than not. What do you think, Craig?
Oh, I definitely think there are. And when I put that LinkedIn post out there, I was hoping that somebody had solved this problem. But the truth is, the answer to the problem is really what a lot of people said. It depends. And even at Eaton, like, I am not working to the assumption that there's a single solution for our entire organization. It really is going to depend on our audience, and then even the post-gate experience. I mean, what happens after they give up their information? What do we do with that information? And does that match the expectation of the person we're trying to reach? So, yeah, it's a tougher cookie to crack than I thought would be. And again, lots of strong opinions, and I'm willing to look at them all to try and find something that works for at least Eaton. And hopefully we can explore that and we can be public about that. Then it'll help other companies find their way too. Like, I'm hoping what we can do here can help kind of do the heavy lifting for others.
Yeah, it seems like there's layers of what, when, and why when deciding what to gate when, where I feel like a lot of the basic content marketers, especially us writers who just like to have, things read, we tend to reflexively want things to be ungated. And I feel like we're fighting against a maybe legacy opinion of owners thinking or sales thinking that as much as possible should be gated. And then we're kind of like in that struggle right now of trying to figure out where that balance is.
And yeah, here's where my content marketing guy hat comes on. I am a firm believer that content marketing's role is to create an audience that will engage with you at some point. But it's so that if you're, and by audience, I don't just mean group of people we have contacts for. I mean, audience actually implies that they're interested in you. Like when you go to a concert and you're in the audience, it's not because you're not a fan of the band. So we want to create fans of our brand, fans of our content, and an audience for that content. And I don't know how you do that without if you're going to restrict it. I do think that there's like but to the why, to the what. I mean, I think it's if we're gating content that's not unique, then we're really just kind of putting a barrier up where that people are going to bounce off of and just go find the next path of least resistance. So why would we send our audience to a potential competitor because we had this need to put something behind a firewall for them? I'm interested in other people's opinions too. I don't want this shouldn't just be a conversation among the three of us. So feel free to chime in. Anybody who has thoughts here.
Yeah, please do. It seems like you make a promise with that gate, like this is unique and something that you're only going to get from us. If you do that with too much stuff, you betray that expectation a little bit.
Well, and again, in my journey, we're an engineering organization. I assume that most of the people who call themselves industrial marketers are related to some kind of an engineering practice, or at least have that kind of engineering, DNA. So I'm trying to get the opinions out of it and look at the data. One of the interesting pieces of data that I want to look at that right now I'm not sure we're capable of analyzing, but it's going to be on our journey is. So let's just assume that we're getting people to our landing page and we want them to do something, and then we throw up a gate in front of them. So what's the ratio to people who abandon your form because the first thing they see after you've paid paid media dollars to get them to your landing page to reach that audience? They get to your landing page. What's the ratio of people who actually fill the form out and go through the gate? I mean, or is that a surprise to them when they get there and then they abandon you because they're like, well, this is maybe good content, but I can find this content out, someplace else. I think that's a really important data point to consider. And what good looks like, I have no idea yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I guess,
No, go ahead.
Oh, hi, I'm Jake.
Hey, Jake.
This is, I guess one of the things that I'm curious about, I love what you said about, when you go to see a concert, you're there to see the band, but likely you've heard the band because you heard them for free on Spotify first, or whatever
Good point.
venue. And so, but you're paying money to be at that concert. And so there's a certain level of like, I guess, you know, you've there's been, you know, you've heard them for free on Spotify, you liked what you heard, and so now you're willing to pay money. And so it seems like the question maybe isn't so much about like gated content should never happen, but how much useful information is enough useful, you know, is going to be really helpful to somebody that they decide that they're worth handing over their email for or something like that.
Yeah, right. And maybe I should have thought through my analogy a little better because yeah, you're right. The concert is actually the gate. So the gates, they literally call it, that's the gate when you pay there. But yeah, no, that's a really interesting point. Yeah, I mean, I think that matching your goals to your content is important, and matching, like I honestly have been trying to find another way to talk about what we call the sales funnel, because I think it's just such a term that it's one of those, we've used it for so long because nobody can come up with a better idea, but it should match the place in the sales funnel that you are. I mean, let's maybe extend that band analogy for a second. So if you're on Spotify and you hear that band for the first time and you're like, I'm not sure if I'm into these guys yet, but somebody said like halfway through the song says, if you want to listen to the rest of the song, like here's you know, you got to pay me $5 or something like that. That would be a terrible experience. But if you've consumed their entire catalog of music and then you hear an ad on Spotify that they're playing in your town, come see them. You're probably in a much better place in the sales funnel, having consumed content, to know that they're an ideal prospect, and clicking something there actually means that you have intent. And then the next step there is that somebody's going to take your money. So you're showing sales intent and you're showing sales engagement, and you have a way to actually interact with that company from a sales standpoint. So if those things are all true and it's valuable and unique, then I'm not against gating. Again, my predilection against gating comes from, I'm a top of funnel guy. You know, I'm a create brand awareness. I'm the guy who's trying to get the band onto Spotify so they can be heard, so they can be recognized, so they can be loved, so people will pay to go see their concerts. But that does sound like a really good job, though. You know, maybe I got a career change.
Yeah, man, you could do that on the side. You already got the whole formula worked out. You can do that on the side. That's a weekend job.
Fun fact, if anybody's familiar with the band Train, I might be dating myself a little bit. I went to high school with Pat Monahan, who's the lead singer of Train.
Is that how you developed the formula?
It is not. Actually, that's how I developed a drinking problem.
Oh, okay. Well, you got something out of it.
Yeah, well, you know.
Oh yeah, I love how you're thinking about that. Like you need to have a opinion and a stance on things in your content, which could be like writing your material, and building it out from there to be able to unveil the entirety of your thoughts and your capabilities on a subject in a almost like an artistic way. I like to be able to think about it like that.
But to that point, I mean, we have to think past the gate. I mean, I think that, Eaton is huge on mapping our buyer journeys and like trying to have an understanding of where our customers are going to go. So once like thinking, I think a lot of marketers who are getting content don't think through what the next step is. So let's just say somebody gives up their information. How long do they have to wait before somebody reaches out to them? Or does that reaching out to them, that filling out the form to download that content so they can read it, does that actually inform sales intent, or is all you want to do is add them to a generic email list?
Karen can probably speak to that. She just had a question in the chat. Karen, you wanna add on to that?
Yeah.
So our big gated content is our configurators, and we let people and this was my previous job as well. You can get all the way through the configurator, but to get the 3D models, then you have to either be logged in or log in. And for me, the struggle has been, this is amazing data. So instead of trying to figure out who went to our website with Google Analytics, the people we don't know, and they didn't do anything, these people went to our website, did something, gave us their contact information, and getting our sales team and marketing team to focus on that content is a problem, because we have that good content, but getting them to understand that these are your fans
And you know, and I think that's an absolutely fantastic case for gating content and the way you're doing it, because you're giving away, you're giving unique content in exchange for very high value. You're helping somebody with their job. And I went to, but to trying to draw a parallel, I recently went and I was looking to buy a car. So I was spending a lot of time on building price tools on OEM websites. And until I was actually ready to buy a car, I always fell short of that, have somebody reach out to me with a quote, because I didn't want that interaction yet. And unfortunately in the automotive world, as soon as you make that interaction, 50 guys are going to reach out to you. They got a much different mindset than what you're thinking of. But yeah, gaining that sales alignment is something that I'm hoping that as we develop our process, we can start to tell our sales reps, we're not, because we've trained sales reps to ignore a lot of our stuff over the years, because we're giving them what we call leads, which is really just a contact or an inquiry. And unfortunately, we've made the mistake, and I say we collectively because I do the same thing, to use lead, content, contact, inquiry all synonymously. And I hear, and when I say that, I hear this in meetings now, I'm like, well, you're not talking about a lead. We're not generating leads. We're generating contacts, and that's fine. And we can use those contacts. And if we have the right tools, we can nurture those contacts into leads. But just downloading a white paper is not intent to buy. So if we turn that over to the sales rep, and they make that call and they get disappointed because of the person's like, well, it's been 24 hours. I forgot that I downloaded that, or I'm not ready to talk to a salesperson. Don't bother me. Or if they even actually pick up the phone at all. We've trained salespeople to not do that. So we've got to be, I think that's why it's more incumbent on marketing to make sure that when we're gating content and our intent is to get a lead, we do want a lead, but it's got to be valuable, and turn it over to sales, they have a high probability of closing, or at least moving to the next phase. So, but I think configurators are great, and you've invested a lot of money probably in developing those configurators. So you should be able to get value out of them.
Yeah, it's like, how can you get sales the leads that make them salivate and actually want to call, and hopefully not do it too quickly or creepily, because we were just talking about that. Like there's a line where it becomes too fast.
Yeah. And I don't know what that magic spot is. I mean, that's, maybe the next phase of this journey is trying to figure out. And again, that's probably going to have a big, it depends too. I mean, because I'm in the residential marketplace, I straddle a B2C and B2B world. Like our B2B side for me is our installer base, maybe our distributors. Our B2C side is consumers. I can't think of a single, and because we go to market through distribution and through retail, I can't think of a single instance where I would care about a lead. I'm not going to, if somebody wants to buy a panel or electric vehicle charger, I'm not fulfilling that. We don't have a salesperson who's going to fulfill that. We're going to turn that over to, we're hoping that our distribution and retail operations will take care of that for us. So I don't want leads, but I like the idea of a contact, but I also want a good contact too. Someone who's engaged with us and cares about us. And unfortunately, on the B2C side of things, it can be very, that contact side can be kind of wishy-washy, because it's, we're kind of depending on when somebody has a need. Nobody's going to buy a circuit breaker unless they have one go bad. No one's going to buy an outlet or a switch unless they have something go bad, unless they're doing a new remodel. But that's really more our installer side. That's a little too in the weeds for you guys, but we have to think through that stuff.
That's right. We dive in the weeds a lot here.
Yeah, Craig, I mean, we're talking about like leads and alignment with sales and marketing, but like to what extent should we be thinking about like the actual customer and what they want? I mean, I think sometimes we get a little selfish of like
Yeah.
leads and like asking for something and not giving anything in return, basically.
Well, I think that's huge. And I think Dale's on the call. He actually put some really nice pearls of wisdom in the chat about this call yesterday, about matching that content to your ideal customer profile. And if you were at the Industrial Marketing Summit last year, Jenny Gritty from Caterpillar did a fantastic presentation on mapping buyer personas to buyer journeys. You got to do that work ahead of time, or at least start. I mean, if you don't want to go through the full process, you at least have to have some kind of hypothesis in your head about who you want to buy your product, what that person looks like, what their likes and dislikes are, what their media habits are. I mean, on and on and on, whatever questions you have to, because that'll help you, buy media more smartly, create content with intent, and have, like, you just got to kind of put yourself in somebody else's shoes instead of I know we're going to be like, if on your annual performance review, it's number of leads generated. Yeah, I can see why we would maybe put our own, our company shoes on before we put our people shoes on or consumer shoes on. But I hope we're not holding ourselves to that account either. I hope we're smart enough to say that, as we're in the effort to build the right audience for us, and somebody wants to buy not just once from us, but many times from us, we need to really understand who they are. And we need to think about mapping our process to their needs, not ours.
Yeah. Service first.
Service first. Yeah. I mean, some leads, God, even the, just think about within Eaton. I mean, the gestation period for a lead can be minutes to hours to months to years. I mean, we are in aerospace down to selling light switches. So like, this is not a one size fits all solution, but I think the questions that people have to ask still remain the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Jennifer Ray had a comment that I think will lead us well into another topic we wanted to get into. Jennifer, do you want to come on and talk about it, or you want me to dive in for you if you're there? Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and jump in for it. The message was our gated content wasn't high value, so we removed the gates. Plus, we felt it helped us with Google search and authority. Now with AI search, we were trying to figure out how to get into AI overview. I know that's something we wanted to talk about, how the gates
me too. Search
and AI right now.
Yeah, this whole AI thing. So I've got a good friend who's on our search team, and as we started finding out that I was kind of leading the strike team to review gated content, he started sending me lots of information, which is probably more recent. Like we constantly filter through information, trying to find the stuff that works for us. So we've got Gartner reports, we've got best practices that we've developed, but the AI stuff seems to be it's coming fast and furious right now. I actually asked the question today of this guy in our team named Todd Roberts. Does AI reward unique content, or is it aggregating content from lots of sources? And he didn't have an exact answer for me, but bottom line, his opinion, and like I hope you guys I would love to hear yours. Gating hurts AI search, AI driven search. But on the other side of that, though, when we're talking about persona development, I got an inquiry from somebody on another part of our team saying that he's had success and would like to explore further using AI to develop a library of personas, and that we can sample to see how they'd like to consume content and what are the barriers to consuming that content. So that's an interesting experiment that can be run. And it's really timely because as we're going through this persona development for my residential group, we're getting ready to poll, thousands of electrical installers about mostly demographic and kind of what they see trends in the marketplace. But we can take that information back to AI and have them analyze that and develop people that we can then query using AI about, would you like to consume here? Do you consume that? There's a lot of different questions you can get smarter about asking. So AI is kind of a two-way street there, which I would not have thought of. I'm still kind of an AI newbie and maybe a little fearful, but I think that it's a question that has to be addressed. What's everybody else thinking about AI right now in terms of gating or not gating or using tools? Nothing. Nobody. Never heard of it.
Anybody? Any takers? Brandon, I know you got thoughts.
I have no idea how AI search works, so I have no thoughts.
Oh, okay.
We're all guessing, I think, a little
Yeah.
bit, but it's funny. I was telling these guys before everybody else came on. I had my refrigerator was failing, so being an idiot DIY person, I turned to search, and I used a lot of AI to query how I should go about fixing this thing, and I probably overbought by 10 components, and then we had a power outage just as I was finishing yesterday. So maybe AI was in charge of the power outage. Maybe the overlords were watching, but got a lot of useful information. But it seemed to me it was aggregated from multiple sources, including the manufacturer of my refrigerator, from appliance parts sellers online. So ultimately, it took me down some rabbit holes, but I ultimately was able to drive my decision making process out of that too. So So that's, again, the big question for me is AI aggregating information, or is it looking for unique information? And my AI guy tells me it's looking for who's got the best answer to your query.
You can tell when it's starting to aggregate because the things aren't
The links,
right.
it starts showing up links that, yeah.
I have a feeling it basically works like SEO rankings, right? Like whoever's got the best piece of content is going to show up as the first SERP, right? So whoever's got the best content is probably going to show up in the AI summary, right? Whoever answers the question the best is how I kind of think about it. So like write the content to answer the question that the people have instead of writing to the robots.
I think that's always been, some of this stuff is, again, content marketing 101. I mean, putting the customer in the FAQ, like what questions is the customer going to ask about this product, service, whatever, is the best place to start with driving your content, and answering those questions succinctly and maybe without a product in mind is another way to win there too, because the content becomes kind of anonymized, and maybe you win because you don't get that pitchy, selly kind of bent to your content.
I wonder how the old tactic of speaking the novel idea or saying something contrary to common knowledge plays into AI, because like sometimes when I'm using it, you'll have one paragraph that says one thing, the next paragraph says a complete different thing, and they don't necessarily make up that difference for you. You just have to like realize what's going on yourself.
Well, that's certainly my
approach.
Yeah, for me, that's certainly my approach to thought leadership. I mean, why would you want to have an opinion on something that everybody and have your opinion be everybody else's opinion? So if you don't have a unique opinion, just stay quiet. Again, I don't know. I mean, we're learning in real time, and we're building this plane while we're flying it when it comes to AI. So if anybody has any learnings there, please share them with me either privately or here, because I'd love to bring that back to the team. But I'm trying to stay in my lane with that stuff too, because it's really easy to get in the rabbit hole. I mean, I ultimately, I think if you just focus on creating good content, and good is it's an air quotes. I mean, what does good look like? It's not good like for us, it's good for the consumer. And if you keep that in mind, I think ultimately you're going to get rewarded.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, talking about that and like thinking about the actual value of what quality content is, I mean, if you're not gating and you just want your content out there, like what's the point of things like white papers and other kinds of content? Like, what's the thought process of deciding I have this idea, this thought leadership, now what does that turn into basically?
Yeah, well, on the subject of white papers, I mean, just like on the subject of gating, I think that we've maybe as marketers have bastardized what a white paper really is intended to do. And my one rule of thumb for white papers, if a white paper leads to your product and your product is a solution to the problem that you posed that you were solving for in the white paper, it's not a white paper, it's a brochure. So it's got to be open, a more open look at providing information that's useful, and not I mean, it's okay to brand your white paper. It's okay to tell them who it's from, because I think in a lot of cases that can give your brand validity, but it also should demonstrate an understanding of the challenges that your customers are going through. Otherwise, why go through the process of researching and writing a white paper? I mean, it should seem more scholarship. It should seem more like a term paper, and it shouldn't just seem like all roads lead to your widget.
Yeah, I always thought of white papers as an academic exercise that maybe a company will perform.
Yeah. And I mean, so we're in the middle of doing a white paper right now that's got really two intentions. It's the evolution of the electrical installer or electrician base, like how they become more specialized, how they become how the energy transition is affecting them. Basically demonstrating and understanding that we know we feel for what's going on in their business and how it's getting kind of scattered or consolidated. But also, so it's demonstrating an understanding to the installers, but also helping educate the internals at Eaton that they aren't what's the word I'm looking for? That electrical installers aren't just one type of person. We tend to squint and see them as one person, or one type or one persona, but they're becoming more fractured, and we need to respond to that with different ways to reach them. And that's just one example of kind of a more research-driven white paper and report that we're going to generate.
And so what kind of metrics are you usually looking for when you're trying to judge the success of something that is necessarily intended to maybe bring in less contacts? Like it feels like you can almost work
Yeah.
against yourself with this if you don't have the right expectations. So how do you
Well,
think
yeah,
about
and
that?
again, we're in industrial marketing. So we aren't playing with huge audiences as it is. And let's play the converse of that. What if we did get 10,000 leads from a campaign? Could we conceivably follow up on them? Or are they just not good enough leads for us to follow up on? Sometimes like achieving success with a small audience is way better than having a volume of audience that you can't close out. So, I mean, when people say like we're trying to market to too small of an audience, I think you're getting exactly where you want to be. I mean, we should be narrowing the field, not broadening the field in a lot of cases. I mean, again, using my electrical installer example, I would love to be able to more cleanly identify electrical installers who are just focused on things like energy transition projects, adding whole home battery systems and photovoltaic systems to people's homes. Full stop. And if I could identify those guys, which is a subset of a subset, I'd be much better at marketing to them and have a much better opportunity to understand what their challenges are and what their needs are, which could then help our product development groups, could help our sales organizations, our distribution platform. So getting small, I think is good. I think that falling into the trap of volume wins all the time is a bad trap.
Craig, what are some of those metrics you like to look for success outside of just like the amount of leads you get in?
For me, I mean, again, going to the top of the funnel, it's page views. It's time on page. Are they getting through my content? I mean, they're very broad. I mean, I feel like I'm a jerk when I say this, but I don't have to burden myself with trying to get to the point where I'm measuring everything. But it does allow me and my team to focus on developing the quality content. So that's kind of what I'm at. And that's a more subjective, I guess, measurement.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear from others, like especially if you're kind of a sole marketer and you're having to kind of report
Yeah, that's a
on
great
this
question.
working, like how do you quantify that basically outside of leads?
Silence.
Yeah.
Is everybody lead driven just by raise of hands, or because I mean, I do recognize, I mean, Eaton's a big organization where we have a very mature marketing organization. We have a big staff, so it's easy for us to say, these are things we should do. But I have been a marketer of one many times, and those organizations tend to be the ones if you look at the org chart, marketing reports to sales, and I think that's also unique to Eaton, that we aren't part of the sales organization. We're a separate organization, which allows us some autonomy and allows us to kind of look at best practices from a marketing perspective that aren't necessarily about driving lead closure or even lead capture.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because we often will hear of the best of intentions that everyone buys into early on with one of these programs. But then when people start getting a little antsy, all of a sudden you fall right back into the old habits of, well, let's just show some numbers.
Yeah. And sometimes you do this. I mean, you shouldn't be guessing, but sometimes testing and iterating is your best friend. I mean, start small, fail small. I always think that if we can, I mean, we have the opportunity to, if we're doing a global campaign on a line of products, it's always easier for us to start in one country and test the waters and invest small and see how it works, iterate from there, and then take those learnings to the next, to the 10 countries, and then we go out to 40 countries, and it's easier for us to do that as a large organization.
Something I'm curious about, speaking of that global reach, calls to action, or something that's very simple and also like people can argue about forever. So how has your all's call to action strategy been different or changing, especially in the different global environments?
It's remarkably varied. And again, I haven't gotten into this project enough to get in the weeds of of what is producing the most results yet. But I think tangent to that question is, what other, short of like putting a form in front of somebody to gate content, how can we get information that shows intent, but maybe not intent to buy? How can we get closer to the customer? And one of the things I always try and parallel this with my B2C, my own experience. And lots of times when I'm interacting with the page, they'll just ask me if I want to subscribe. I mean, if all you're going to send people to, like, if they fill a form out and all you're going to do is put them on an email list anyways, why don't you just ask them if they want them on the email list and see how you do? I mean, if that's what your intent is. And I think that we also, as one of the things we're also burdened by as a large organization, is legals in our shorts about everything. So our forms tend to be really burdensome, and we have like multiple check boxes you have to check in order to get through the form. And I want to kind of press on as part of this process to see, have we evolved our thinking that way? Is the risk really worth, or the reward really worth the risk? Or is there that much of a risk that we can start to ask for less? And we know there are tools in place. HubSpot's obviously one of them that can start to help us with the progressive profiling and matching information together as they're willing to give it to us, and start to build a profile and then score. But ironically, those are not tools that I have access to. So we're kind of, I don't think that answered your question. I think it went off it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. There are a lot of interesting things there. And that's something that, you're probably that's always developing and changing, depending on what you're doing and what customers are thinking about that day. Jared Beasley had a point that I think that we were wanting to get into, before we get too much later in the conversation, about how annoying it can be to fill out a bunch of info, and then and especially if then after you do all that trouble, there's another extra step to get to your content. And I don't know if we've touched on just how much effort you should ask of somebody, even if you're giving them good stuff.
Right. I mean, like, it always comes to me. I mean, I always just want to say, I just got a note that came on screen that's my internet connection's unstable. So if I drop off, I'll come back on as soon as I can. It's funny how in the office there, it's the worst.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Refresh my memory. What were we talking about?
How much info do you feel like how much effort, I guess I should say, should you expect from a prospect when getting them to fill out the stuff?
Minimal. People are lazy. I mean, absolutely minimal. I mean, if God, I don't need your first name, last name if I have your email. Like, if the email is going to be the way I'm going to communicate with you, then ask for the email. And again, this is back, like, the more you give, the more, it's almost this correlation with the more information you give, the more people are going to bother you. So, and again, that's just like when I put my own, like, this is my own personal bias, but it's hard to take that bias hat off. And I'm not going to give up more information than that unless I really want to talk to you. And then I'll tell you by clicking some box that says, have a salesperson reach out to me. It's funny. One of the things I saw in our research was our sales inquiry forms, which are not necessarily gating content, but they're just forms that are on our product pages, get more traction or more form fills than any of our gated content does. And I don't know. I think there's two ways to look at that. Either that person you can look at it at a positive standpoint. That person has seen enough of our information to actually want a salesperson to reach out to them, thereby inquiring. Or they're so frustrated by the process that they want to opt out and just go the easy route and say, just have somebody call me because I'm sick of this. And I don't know what the answer, I don't know which way they're going, maybe both, but those are two ways to look at that. And when you get that kind of generic sales form fills, I wouldn't say generic, they're usually product related, but.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I think everyone can relate to is the feeling of being trapped by a form.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and again, in further to that, there's nothing more frustrating than going to a website and filling out a form and then going back to that website and having to fill out a form again to fill out another piece of content. Like, remember me, give me a way to sign in and log in and remember me. And we have in our myeaton.com environment is a completely logged in environment. It's generally intended for our our B2B customers, so their businesses. But if we can make a fast pass so they can be remembered and logged in, we'd be able to know exactly what interactions they've had with our content without having them to log in. And I think that's another way we can approach this idea of gating, is make your content useful enough that somebody will want to create an account with you. And if they do that, then you have no holds barred in terms of how much information you can gather around that person about their buyer journey instead of guessing.
Craig, if you had like one thought you wanted to leave everybody with today about gated content, what would it be?
One thought. Well, I still believe gating is for livestock. I'm going to keep playing that soundbite as long as people listen to it. But again, I think the resounding, the groupthink around this concept is it's not solved, and it's different for everybody. I'm happy to share my journey as I go through it. I'm actually even thinking about putting this topic in for the Industrial Marketing Summit. So if people think that's interesting, please reach out to the powers that be and let them know they think it's a good topic. But I'm not going to talk about how to do, I'm just going to talk about what our process was to go through, because I think that's the only thing I can teach people is how we got to our answer, if by then we've gotten to our answer. Because I think that people have to go through a process to figure out what the answer is for them. And so a qualified "it depends" is probably the best answer to should I gate or not gate. Mm-hmm. But the other thing I'd say, final, just keep making really good content.
Can't go wrong.
Yeah. Focus on the customer's needs, create good content around that, be leaders, and you'll win.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. That was a great closing thought. Craig, thanks so much for all the wisdom. And, we will look forward to any updates, on this as we move along. But if people wanted to keep up with you in the meantime, what's the best way to stay in touch with you?
LinkedIn is super easy, and I'm happy to give you my email address at Eaton. It's craigcoffey@eaton.com. Just hit me up, and I will not gate my content.
And we thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, our next episode is going to be a full month from now on July 17th at 10 a.m., the usual time, where we're going to be talking about Google Ads. Between now and then, if you'd like to keep this conversation going with the crew here, join us on Circle's discussion boards, and you can visit us at industrialmarketingcollective.com or ping Connor, Peyton, or I on LinkedIn. We'll get you all set up, and we'll keep the conversation going. But Craig, thank you so much. Great job, everybody. Thanks for being here. It's been a great.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for helping me.
We can't thank you enough. All right, have a good day, everybody.